Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different, a completely blameless postmortem. We're going to investigate a recent, honestly pretty disastrous deployment. We'll break down exactly what went wrong, and we're going to look at the technology that allows modern engineering teams to figure out exactly who, or actually what specific commit, broke production. Look, we have all lived through this universal nightmare, right? You push a brand new deployment to production, you're feeling great about it, maybe grabbing a coffee, and then 10 minutes later, errors are just massively spiking. Customer support is lighting up, the app is crashing, and the absolute worst part, nobody knows exactly what changed, and nobody knows who to talk to. You are flying completely blind, the panic sets in, and you realize you're about to spend the next 3 hours doing literal log archaeology. Okay, let's dive into this and solve it. Today we're going to cover the post-deploy nightmare, the anatomy of release tracking, automating the pipeline, the releases dashboard, and finally a real post-mortem of a payment service outage. Starting off with Section 1, the post-deploy nightmare. Imagine the absolute dark ages of debugging. You are just staring at a generic list of errors. There's no context, there's no timeline, just a raw, terrifying feed of failures. But then, contrast that with the enlightened state inside Sentry. Suddenly, errors are mapped perfectly to a specific release, complete with the exact commit blame and the author's name right there in front of you. Honestly, the difference between these two states is literally the difference between a 5-minute quick fix and a 5-hour wild goose chase. Moving on to Section 2, anatomy of release tracking. First things first, we really need to define what a release actually is in this context. In the Sentry ecosystem, a release is simply a specific version of your code that has been deployed to an environment. And crucially, it is directly tied to your Git commits. Think of it as the ultimate bridge between what your developers just wrote and what your users are currently experiencing in the app. To make this work, a tracked release requires a few key ingredients. You need a specific version identifier, that's usually a git SHA or a semantic version tag. You absolutely need the associated git commits so you actually know what changed. And finally, you need environment deploy markers, just so you know if this code went to staging or straight to production. When you notify Sentry the release has happened, it auto-discovers those commits and can instantly identify regressions, meaning you know the second those previously squashed bugs suddenly come back from the dead. All right, Section 3, automating the pipeline. Because literally nobody wants to do this manually, setting this up via the Sentry CLI or in a CI/CD pipeline, like GitHub Actions, is incredibly efficient. It's basically 3 steps. Step 1, you add your Sentry auth token as a repository secret. Step 2, drop in the official Sentry release GitHub action. And Step 3, configure it to inject debug IDs and upload source maps. That last part is absolutely vital for front-end apps if you want your stack traces to be, actually readable. Oh, and a super quick pro tip here, always ensure your checkout step uses a fetch depth of 0. Sentry actually needs that full Git history to accurately associate those commits and authors.
Let's jump into Section 4, the releases dashboard.
Once everything is flowing, you get this centralized hub. When you open the release details page, the insights are immediate. You can track your crash-free session rate, which is pretty much the ultimate indicator of your user's experience. You get these great visual trend lines for crashes, raw error counts, and transaction counts. But I've got to say, the most powerful feature here is the comparison metric. Sentry automatically compares your current release's health straight against your baseline organizational average. When you start comparing those deploy metrics, problems just instantly jump out at you. Imagine your previous release had a beautifully low error rate, but the current release is just spiking completely out of control above the baseline. You don't have to guess if a release went bad anymore. The visual contrast tells you immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, that something in this specific deploy is broken.
And that brings us to Section 5, the payment service outage post-mortem.
Let me set the scene for you. It started on a completely normal Tuesday afternoon. Right after a deployment, we saw a massive 3x spike in type errors. Alarms were going off everywhere, Slack was blowing up, and our checkout page was completely failing for a huge subset of users. It was full-on panic mode. The impact was brutal. Our normally super stable crash-free session rate took an abrupt, terrifying nosedive. We went down to 80% healthy and a wild 20% errored sessions. 1 in 5 users literally couldn't complete a transaction. We were losing money and we needed answers immediately. But because we actually had release tracking set up, we didn't have to guess. We clicked on the top spiking issue, and Sentry had already automatically tagged it with a crystal clear marker, regressed in release. It tied the error directly to our very latest deploy marker, confirming instantly that our newest code was the culprit. But here is where it gets really cool. Sentry goes a step further with this feature called suspect commits. While your team is panicking, Sentry acts like the calm detective in the room, using this automated logic. First, it isolates all the in-app frames in the stack trace, completely ignoring the noisy third-party libraries. Next, it cross-references the specific failing file and line numbers directly with your repository. And finally, it checked the Git blame for any commits made to those exact lines within the last year. The result of that detective work was practically instantaneous. Sentry surfaced the exact Git commit that caused the outage. And there it was, the smoking gun. Fix payment gateway payload formatting, authored by a specific developer on our team. In literally seconds, we bypassed hours of frustrating debugging. We knew exactly what broke, where it broke, and most importantly, exactly who had the context to fix it right then. It's honestly incredible how effortless the resolution cycle becomes. Sentry identifies the suspect commit. Then, it uses ownership rules to auto-assign the issue to the developer who wrote the code. That developer jumps in, writes a patch, and inside Sentry they simply mark the issue as resolved in next release. The moment that new patch deploys, Sentry clears the error. And the best part? If that exact error ever sneaks back into a future version, Sentry is going to instantly flag it as a brand new regression. Because we connected our deployment pipeline to our error monitoring, we solved a critical, money-losing payment outage in minutes instead of hours. So, I have to leave you with a pretty critical question for your own engineering team. Are you actually tracking your releases, or are you just sitting around waiting for the next fire? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.